On the latest episode of The Bill Barnwell Show, I talked to ESPN The Magazine's Mina Kimes about the latest episode of The Bachelor. Hot stuff. You can check out the show on iTunes or by going to the ESPN app on your phone.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Adrienne Lawrence, and speaking of Adrians, the New York Giants have got Adrian Peterson's attention. The Vikings star running back set Twitter ablaze last night by tweeting out, "The Giants have been making some interesting moves." New York recently cut their top rusher, Rashad Jennings. An AD, he happens to be under contract in Minnesota, but many expect that he'll be asked to take a pay cut this season. And also in Minnesota, the chairwoman of the authority that oversees the Vikings Stadium has resigned. Michelle Kelm-Helgen was facing criticism for letting family and friends use the stadium's suites, possibly violating ethical rules. And sticking in the NFC North, the Detroit Lions have started a $100 million renovation to enhance Ford Field. The project is scheduled to be done before the season starts in September. And in baseball, it's official. Chris Carter will be in pinstripes this year. The free agent first baseman just finalized a $3.5 million one-year deal with the Yankees. Carter tied for home run leader in the National League last season while he was with Milwaukee. And in New York, he'll likely help out at DH.
This just in, Wendy's is adding the Quarter Pounder Double Stack as an option for the 4 for $4. With over a quarter pound of beef, 4 nuggets, fries, and a drink, that's a deal so good it should not exist. Yet it does, at participating locations for a limited time.
Now, Russillo and Cannell on ESPN Radio.
And ESPNRadio.com.
Russillo and Cannell, it's ESPN Radio. Cannell, for those listening on ESPN Radio, we'll have to do a picture of his handlebars that he has today. So he's gone from the beards to the handlebar. I imagine with a formal affair this weekend that you will be
Yes.
you'll be back to clean-shaven Danny on Monday.
Yeah, I have a black tie gala tomorrow night, so I don't know how they'd feel if I showed up with this look going on.
Look
and
good.
I don't know if my wife would show up with me with this look going on.
Well, she can say he doesn't look good. She just might be worried that she's
I
going to
think
lose you.
That's probably the real concern that she has, too.
Real estate lady.
Because you know who
there.
loved it? Brady. My 4-year-old thought it was awesome.
Tom?
No. My girl.
Your daughter. Well,
yes,
Tom
my daughter,
liked it.
Brady. Yeah,
Tom
she
liked
loved
it, too. I wouldn't find it surprising.
Yeah.
We want to talk about the mock drafts that are out because Mel's got a new one. And not just, hey, this guy's 12th and this guy's 15th, but a bigger question about mock drafts. We also are going to have Jamel Hill on, which is where we're going to start. And this is the Draymond Green podcast, Dre Day. And you've probably heard this now, this audio. I talked about it this morning on Mike and Mike and on Sports Center. And it was one of those things. We had Bob Myers. We thought that interview was great. We're like, yeah, people probably pick up on that. That storyline of him talking about how Durant and him talked when Durant decided to go there, getting over the 3-1 loss, didn't happen.
Right.
Okay, because race was brought up. The Oakley story was brought up. And Draymond Green, looking at the Charles Oakley, James Dolan story of last week, had this to say about it.
And that's a slave mentality. You're doing it for me, it's all good. But now you're doing it against me, or not necessarily against me, but you're speaking out against my organization. It's not good anymore. That's a slave mentality, slave master mentality. That's ridiculous. It was all fine and dandy when he was laying people out, taking fines.
Laying out Jordan, right?
You know, taking fines and all this stuff for your organization. But now all of a sudden when he says something that he feels, it's a problem. I disagree with that. I definitely think, like I said, that that's a slave master mentality.
You want me to go first on this one?
Yes.
Okay, I disagree with Draymond here, and I like Draymond a lot. I like him when he's on the air. I like when I've run into him in person. I really do like him. I just think he's incredibly wrong here, and that might be me not understanding it, and that's okay. But I'd suggest a couple things. One, on the reference of what Oakley had done for the franchise, and then this is how he's treated. Well, that's what the salary was for. Mm-hmm. The salary was there to compensate you for the blood, sweat, and tears as a player. I'd like to ask the question, is there any possible way we can have a disagreement between a white guy and a black guy where it has nothing to do with race? Because I think if you look at the optics of it, where it's a bunch of white men being told by the man in power, another white man in Dolan, to go after the black guy, the optics of it, and then with Oakley on the ground surrounded by all these white men, like that's a That's a tough image for a lot of people to get past. And I understand just looking at that picture, Danny, like it's tough to argue how bad that looks. But this is the beauty of the story is that we actually have more information. We have more context. We know that no one likes Dolan. We know that Oakley doesn't like Dolan. And we know that Dolan is an owner. He is an owner of a franchise, not an owner of a person, not an owner of the player. He is an owner of the franchise. So even if we don't like him and think he's completely out of control and wrong and misguided, he still gets to do that because he owns the Knicks. So he can be wrong. None of us can like him, but he can also just be doing something to Oakley that's wrong is just because he doesn't like the guy. Am I so naive to think we could still maybe have things in present day that are just about one guy not liking someone else and not making it about a historical event, an act, a horrible act that we seem to have it being referenced in any race discussion today?
That's what bothers me about it, because it's one of these days when you see the news and you know we're going to talk about it, right? Because it's a sports issue. You have one of the biggest names in the NBA is making this accusation, and so you know you're going to have to talk about it. And I think some shows get fired up, like, hey, we have this opportunity, we can do this. For me, I know coming in, I know what we're getting into because we're two white guys. I just know what we're getting into because we can't relate to that side of an argument. But I am totally with you where you can look at this and separate it out and say, I don't think this has anything to do with the slave master mentality. These two have a feud that goes back almost a decade. Like, they're going back in the newspaper, publicly playing it out. Oakley wanted a job with him, so he's bitter he never got a job with the organization. He's called him a mother bleeper, in the press. I mean, he's done a number of things where Dolan can do what he wants as the owner. Now, if you really want to get into semantics and nuances of it, yeah, does it have some resemblances to a slave-owner relationship? Yeah, if you really try to stretch things in this, and really try to, I don't know, it seems like way too much of a stretch to me.
If you want to go with the fundamental part of it, if that this is the owner and everyone answers to him, and this is the master on the plane, like, if I understand those, but then
isn't that how every working relationship works? Like, when I was an NFL player, I had an owner that I had to answer to, and I was cut. And every player, you do feel like an employee. I don't want to use the word slave because I would never feel that way. And maybe some of my coworkers, my fellow NFL players, did feel that way. I definitely felt like a piece of meat. I definitely felt like I was worthless to them when I was cut and left for scraps, and just said, hey, we don't care. Like, you do feel you're at the whim, but isn't that the same at a lot of workplaces? Like here, I mean, I feel like the same thing. If we don't produce, we're going to get cut. We have to answer to somebody. It's just kind of a hierarchy, a power structure that is in every organization, it seems.
I would agree, but I think people look at it differently, that they're not just employees, even though they are, right? They're famous guys that make a ton of money. We like the players more than the owners, especially more now than ever before. But you can hate Dolan. You can think he's wrong. I don't know who to believe in some of this. I wonder, could Dolan actually have a point on some of his criticisms of Oakley, as irresponsible as they were to share with everybody? I've asked myself that question. But let's say Dolan's completely wrong about everything and was immature and just totally making up stuff to spin it his way, and that's still not going to work. I mean, that's just the way it goes right now. It wouldn't work because people are so anti-Dolan. Is there anything that could just be about Dolan being wrong, not liking Oakley, and that's what it is, and not invoke this analogy that Draymond Green used? Russillo and Cannell, ESPN Radio, presented by Progressive Insurance. You can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. Howard Bryant, ESPN.com senior columnist and from ESPN the magazine, was on with me this morning on SportsCenter, and he got into that relationship of player and owner, employee, and everything we've just been talking about.
This is just an issue of power more than anything else. I think that whenever you hear the word slave master mentality, obviously it's going to be incendiary. Obviously it's going to be something that provokes a reaction. But I think this is where the NBA has been heading and where sports has been heading in terms of power. We're really talking about partnership, or are we talking about owner versus player? And I think we've seen this over and over again when you go back to LeBron James with the Donald Sterling situation, where they were talking about our league and negotiating with Adam Silver as a partnership. And then all of a sudden you have a situation like this where once again the owner reminds you that he's the owner and you're the player. And I think this is where things are heading as players begin to try to assert themselves even more.
I went back and looked this up this morning because I've always been a big fan of the economic history of sports, okay? And baseball was basically 100% white until the color barrier finally was broken. So you go late 40s all the way to the 70s, basically 100% white to about 70% white, even into the 80s. You had a lawsuit against the baseball owners in the 70s for collusion, okay? My position would be, if you're an owner, you're going to try to screw over the players no matter what they look like, because that's just the way business is done. And to say that the NBA players are not partners with ownership right now, they have a pretty good – I'm more pro-player on the economic stuff of this, but that's almost exactly what they have. The CBA is, in fact, in a revenue-sharing partnership, and it's about 50-50. So I don't think owners look at their employees going, well, it's mostly a black league in the NFL, it's mostly a black league in the NBA, so let's take advantage of these guys. Let's treat these guys like they're less than anybody else in the country, when white players in baseball for the decades got treated like crap. You know why? Because they were taken advantage of. I mean, the guys with money, the much money to put together to own one of these franchises, like that guy's going to think he's pretty special, and that guy's going to remind you all the time that he's in charge. I wish all 30 NBA teams were owned by black ownership. I really wish that. Like, I wish all 30 teams had black owners, because you know what would happen then? Nothing different.
Right.
They would still be looking out for the value of their franchise. They'd be looking out for their piece of the pie in the revenue cut. I don't know if Dolan were black, would he have handled the Oakley thing different if he was an incompetent owner who'd run into all this money with the way Dolan has from his father and had been criticized for a decade by Oakley? Would he have handled that differently? Like, I understand the optics. I am not insensitive to that. But I wish we had more black ownership, because my guess would be the relationship between player and owner, and not slave master here, owner of an NBA team, I don't think it'd be any different from what we have right now.
Well put.
At Russillo Cannell, 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed. You have an awesome take after much research on this Mitch Trubisky thing, and I can't wait, because you're going to lose it. I think Danny's going to get really upset. You have shorthand, cursive?
Something like that.
All right. Trubisky and why the narrative on him is wrong. Next on ESPN Radio. I'm wearing this shirt right now, and I love it. I may stay in it all weekend long. CT Shirts, some solid career advice. Dress for the job you want, not the job you have, whether at work or out with friends. People notice the clothes you wear.
It's why you need Charles Tyrrell shirts. They're British styled using the softest crease-free fabrics. Tie or no tie, tucked or untucked, CT Shirts will be your favorite, just like Ryan and I.
One CT shirt normally costs $100, so immediately we hit up our producer, Michelle, and say, can we get some more shirts from these guys? And we're not kidding. Like, I wore it all day today on TV, wearing it during the show. Euro cut, loving it. But now you're going to get 3 shirts for $99. So that's 3 for almost the cost of 1. 60% off, $99 for 3 amazing CT shirts. Go to ctshirts.com/ESPN, ctshirts.com/ESPN.
Russillo and Cannell is presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests of the show appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Jamel Hill's going to join us here on the show. It's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, half the cost. Mock drafts, Harbaugh back in the news, PJ Carlesimo, so a lot to get to. But I know that the Mitch Trubisky story has kind of been driving Cannell crazy here. He is, speaking of mock drafts, Mel Kiper's 2.0 out today, ESPN.com. He has the Browns going with Myles Garrett at number 1, but not Deshaun Watson, number 2 to San Francisco. He has Mitch Trubisky of North Carolina. We had Bill Polian on.
Yeah.
Remember we asked him about Trubisky?
I do.
This was from 2 days ago.
Let's take Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina. He's only played in 13 games.
You can take him. Be my guest.
Right. So you would rather have a Garoppolo than a guy with question marks.
I don't know what Trubisky can do.
Right.
He couldn't beat out the guy who played in front of him who couldn't make it anywhere in the league. Wasn't even drafted.
What do you say to the people that say Tom Brady didn't beat out, whoever it was at Michigan?
But
Brady had the job. He was beaten out by a phenom.
Right.
and then got the job back. So it's not a correct comparison. Trubisky could not win the job.
Right.
And then if you saw him in the Stanford game where he should have been at his best, you want to tear your hair out.
Yeah.
Does he have physical tools? Yes. Is he ready to play? Absolutely not.
All right. I did notice how you kind of jumped in there too. So maybe you don't like, you're on the narrative is what the thing is.
No, I'm anti that Brady was just this poor senior stuck on the bench the end of his career.
Okay.
And it just,
but
makes for a
to be
better
fair,
story.
so I did a lot of research to this because the Mitch Trubisky narrative, which has been going on by everybody, it's almost become his middle name. Like Mitch couldn't beat out Marquise Williams Trubisky. Like everybody, it's the go-to line for every analyst out there.
Well, actually, Brady had the job. You
got in there with that one quick.
Had to protect Tommy.
So I did it because I was Googling this, just trying to find out who all has made this statement, and it's almost everybody. You heard Polian just reference it. Eric Edholm from Yahoo Sports couldn't beat out Marquise Williams. CBS Sports, Rob Rang, disconcerting. He couldn't win the job until his third year in. Bucky Brooks from NFL, great dude, does great stuff. I worry about a one-year wonder in that he couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, in his first 3 years. Then I'll leave this one anonymous. Kind of like Jamarcus Russell couldn't beat out Matt Flynn. How'd that work out? Like it's getting really
Did
bad.
anyone say that, by the way, when Jamarcus was about to be drafted?
No.
I've never heard that one.
No one said it. So I went
By
back
the way,
and
Mayock
researched.
said it.
Mayock said it as well. I mean, it's everybody's go-to line on Mitch Trubisky, which is fine. It is a fact about his career, but I don't necessarily see it as this awful, horrendous thing that you have to have, just crushing you, and it's dragging him down in the draft like he's awful. First of all, Marquise Williams was a really good college quarterback. We all agree on that?
He was really good. It's okay. And sometimes
we treat him like he's a piece of trash, like some garbage. He was a good quarterback.
How many years younger was Trubisky too than
he was?
Williams?
A few. He was. So here's what bothers me the most about it. What do we do when a guy transfers? If he can't win the job, he's a quitter. The guy's a quitter.
Well, you
he's
did do that to Barnett.
Absolutely, I do it too. That's why I'm actually trying to defend somebody who stuck through it. Who was like, hey, I'm going to wait my turn. I'm not going to quit on my teammates. I'm going to wait my opportunity, and when I get it, I'm going to make the most of it. So, Tom Brady started his junior year, then his senior year, after playing an entire year, had to split reps the first 5 games of his senior year with Henson to see where he was. So he didn't exactly slam dunk win that job. That's just one of them. Your boy Joe Flacco couldn't beat out Tyler Palko at Pitt. What did he do? He transferred. Don't love it.
Quitter.
Aaron Rodgers couldn't beat out Reggie Robertson at Cal in his first couple years. Then he finally got his start. These are the ones that get debatable as I was digging through here. Kurt Warner, of course, legendary about all the jobs he couldn't win. Like he couldn't get a
Against
gig.
Favre, Brunel, and Ty Detmer?
No, I'm talking about just to get
everywhere.
to the NFL. Yeah, everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere in his career.
I just want to make
point.
sure we cut you off when you start doing the cowherd thing where
You go
you're
ahead.
adding things
So, like,
to
if
the
I went
analogy.
Cam Newton couldn't beat out Tim Tebow, is that crossing the line?
Yes.
Okay, just checking. So, Ryan Tannehill, okay, because he's a similar case study. Couldn't beat out Gerard Johnson at Texas A&M. Had to play receiver. Had to split time with him. Finally got to play 1 full year. Didn't play much. That was a knock on him. But my question to you, and Cerruti kind of was alluding to this in our pre-show meeting, like he was 8th overall pick. He's been pretty good. I think there's still a ton unknown. But if you're Mitch Trubisky's like a similar to Ryan Tannehill, wouldn't you say, yeah, he's worth a top 10 pick?
Tannehill's a tougher sell for me, but if you just kind of open it up to that you're going to have a guy that physically can play the position, I think Tannehill still physically is maybe more impressive than some of the numbers. What are we talking, a year and a half of numbers where you go, wow, that's really good, and you just wish it was more consistent? That's still probably worth or merit a top 10 pick, especially when you're a fan base or just a front office that goes, we've had to figure out the answer to this question, what are we doing at quarterback, for a bunch of years in a row. But the bigger point is what? In that everybody's like somebody said it the first time, and now everybody's just repeating it over and over again as if Mitch Trubisky, who, by the way, was 2 years younger than Williams, is the only guy that didn't start immediately as an NFL prospect.
Right, and it drives me nuts because I think people are using it to pepper him. If you want to criticize him for saying, hey, it was only 13 games, well, I think that's a totally fair assumption. You can make that all day long, and you can accuse that. I wish he would have stayed, but the NFL Advisory Board gave him a first-round pick. Great. So good for him. Good for taking the payday to come out. I just don't want it to be something where people get lazy and everybody's go-to is, well, couldn't beat out Marquise Williams, because it's not that big a deal. Let's take Mitch Trubisky from North Carolina. He's only played in 13 games.
You can take him. Be my guest.
Right. That's the weakest voice I think I've ever heard myself go with.
No, you sound worse here. But Brady
Well,
did
actually,
beat out.
Brady had the job. You
cut in there on me.
Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable networks. People are going to be like, you're such a secret Brady homer. And I would go, well, he is pretty good.
Yeah, he's done all right for himself.
Jamel Hill on the Draymond Green topic from the start of the show and how she sees these comments. That's next on ESPN Radio.
ESPN Radio Sports Center.
I'm Adrienne Lawrence, and here's what you need to know. There are warrants out for the arrest of 3 Michigan State football players. The warrants stem from an investigation into a sexual assault claim. The 3 players have been evicted from student housing at Michigan State, but their names have not been released. Last week, the Spartans athletic department said it hired an independent law firm to review how the program handled the alleged assault. And in the pros, Vince Young is eyeing a comeback. The 33-year-old former quarterback hired agent Lee Steinberg in an effort to resurrect his NFL career. Young hasn't played in an NFL regular season game in just over 5 years. And in baseball, salary arbitration didn't go great for Pittsburgh reliever Tony Watson. The lefty will make $400 Gs less than he wanted next season at $5.6 million. Watson delivered a .306 ERA in 70 appearances with the Pirates in 2016. And Big Ten Conference ball is on for tonight. Number 11 Wisconsin taking on Michigan. That starts 7 Eastern on ESPN. And after that, there'll be a Pac-12 showdown between the Utes and Ducks in Eugene. That's Utah and number 7 Oregon, 9 Eastern, ESPN.
Time to upgrade your wardrobe with CT Shirts, the most exquisitely crafted British-styled crease-free shirts I've ever worn. One CT shirt normally costs $100. I got you 3 shirts for just $99. Go to ctshirts.com/ESPN. ctshirts.com/ESPN.
Russillo and Canales presented by Progressive Insurance. All guests of the show appear on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
She may be the biggest star in all of New Orleans this weekend, and I am jealous because she'll be involved in a game that I'm apparently no longer allowed to be in.
Take out the maybe. She will be.
That's right. Jamel Hill joins us now on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. She's Shell V Power Nitro plus premium gasoline for the best total engine protection that you can get. She's hosting and coaching in the Celebrity All-Star Game. So, Jamel, how's New Orleans?
It's like you remembered it. A lot of fun. Obviously I just been here a couple of hours, but, with New Orleans, everything is just right out there in the open. And I just want to say, because you said that about the game you're no longer allowed in, I don't know the particulars. I'm just a first-year coach. But I want people to understand I did not pick my team, okay?
I know, right?
Don't you get a coach's pick, though, for Russillo? Couldn't you get him last minute, like coach's pick?
Look, if I could have, I would tell you this. I swear on everything I love. And when black people swear on everything they love, it means something. Is that if Russillo were actually here, I swear I would do an in-game trade. I'm not even playing.
Well, we're looking at flights still, so we'll see what's going on.
Okay.
All right, let's.
If you make it here by tomorrow, I got you.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. You and I talked a bit off the air, and we opened with the Draymond Green comments about James Dolan, the Charles Oakley situation. So when you hear Draymond make the analogy that this is kind of the slave master mentality and how Dolan was acting towards Oakley, what's your reaction when you hear that?
Well, my immediate reaction is I like to read the full context of what people said, because if you recall, that terminology was thrown around a lot when Dan Gilbert, with his Comic Sans letter response to LeBron leaving. And I thought I kind of understood where that one was going. This one, to me, is a lot different. And I just think in general that you have to be really careful about how you throw that term around, given the nature and the seriousness and the incredible generational impact that slavery had on us as a nation. so you have to be really careful because, honestly, how often do we hear any kind of analogies to concentration camps or anything dealing with the Holocaust? We don't. And I think there's, with very good reason, it's because you want to make sure that you keep that within the reverence it deserves. So for me, it was a little problematic, given that James Dolan obviously has relationships with former players who are Black, but he has obviously a very negative relationship to this former player. So the irritation for me is not necessarily in what Draymond Green said. The irritation for me now going forward is going to be all these people who pretend to know everything about slavery. That's going to be the irritation, because now you're going to have all the outraged police of people putting off and like, yeah, you can never say this, and comparing something to slavery. And it's like, okay, I don't need to fake care. What he said to me was just off the mark, and we can just leave it at that.
Jamel, when I heard the comments at first, I was bummed because I'm like, I know what's going to happen. I know people are going to come out with hot takes. They're going to come out with their sides of the argument. And it's such a meaningful discussion that needs to be had by our country when you talk about race, that when it is thrown around in situations like this, where I don't think it pertains to this situation, that I think it's detrimental to the bigger discussion. Do you agree with that?
It is detrimental, but, the problem I struggle with Danny, is it detrimental because we need to be smarter, or is it detrimental because you have people throwing around things? Like, I think we just live in a culture period where when certain people say certain things, that it automatically becomes news, and I don't know if that's appropriate necessarily. Like, I realize this is Draymond Green, and he's playing on the Warriors, best team in the NBA, and he's got a high-profile position. So anything he says is going to be very newsworthy. But we also have to remember, like, this dude is in his 20s, and I'm not trying to excuse anything that he says based off his age, because I think, that's obviously an easy out for somebody. But I'm also trying to get people to be a little bit elevated in your thinking, in the sense that, like, every time somebody invokes either slave or slave mentality, or even, I saw some comments before I got on air with you guys about Charles Oakley comparing Donald Sterling to James Dolan. Like, look, I felt like Oakley, I was on his side of this thing, but you can't make that comparison. Like, we got to keep this legitimate and real and make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to pomegranates.
Jamel, one of the things that I think is really important to remember through all this, though, is luckily we have more information about what this relationship is about. But is there ever a part of you, when you just see the optics of Oakley on the ground surrounded by white security guards, that you can't help but think that race is part of this when we just look at that part, when it's almost like the optics of it may be more difficult to deal with, but when we're armed with all the information, we understand where the conflict is with these two people in particular?
Well, I understand what the conflict is, but I still don't think it should ever get to that, because, look, there are former players that go back to arenas all the time. There are former players that, frankly, criticize their old organization. But most owners are smart enough to know that even if this former player is saying something that maybe something I don't like, but, like, you know how to pick your battles. You can be more mature about it. And I thought the optic, to your point, of Oakley being surrounded by these, white security officials, given where we are at a time in our country with, the treatment of African Americans by the police and by authority figures, like, that's a bad optic. Like, it should never get to that. It should never get to that. And so I do put that on James Dolan, because regardless of your issues with Oakley, like, you can't ever let that visual be something that's put out there, because it's just way too triggering for a lot of people, myself included. So, I'll just say this, is that while I do think, we have to be certainly mindful, careful, and thoughtful about how we bring race into any conversation, we also have to understand sometimes when we're serving people racial porn, as I like to call it, and that was an image of racial pornography.
Let me finish, and that's a great analogy there. Jamel Hill, the co-anchor of the 6 o'clock Sports Center, the 6 here on ESPN. If the NBA, if the 30 teams instead of one black owner, if it was 20 black owners, how different do you think the league would be with its relationships with its players?
Well, generally speaking, though, here's the crazy part of where the NBA, I think, has been able to set itself apart. And why right now, I think you can make the very fair argument that Adam Silver is the best commissioner in all of the major pro sports.
Agreed.
The thing is, even though you don't have a majority black ownership, you have an ad hoc majority black ownership in the sense that, as you know, Ryan, it's a players' league. One player can completely tank or uplift an entire franchise by himself. We saw that with LeBron. We see it with numerous superstars all the time. So even though they may not necessarily be owners, there is a level of power that players have in this league that is very unique. And that's why Adam Silver and that's why Michael Jordan jumped into this, because I think if this happens in the NFL, Roger Goodell probably wouldn't jump in. He probably wouldn't care, right? Because it wouldn't be that bad of an optic for their league necessarily, given what the power structure is. But in this league, you have to jump in if you're Adam Silver. And so even though this is something that was awful and regrettable that happened, I do think it's a very unique New York Knicks James Dolan situation. Like, I can't think of it as a single ownership where even some of the worst that we have, maybe only Donald Sterling, and he's not in the league anymore. And even with him, the worst we saw was him going off on Baron Davis and calling him all kind of names courtside. But, like, I can never imagine another ownership that would be okay with one of their former players being drug out of an arena, and I think that speaks to what the power dynamic is in the NBA.
Jamel, thanks so much for spending some time with us. We do really appreciate it. Have some fun down in New Orleans. You know you're going to find a way to do that, and enjoy the celebrity game, all right?
All right, we'll do. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, Jamel Hill with us. Priscilla and Cadell reminding you can listen to all 3 hours of the show on your phone on your ESPN. We'll get back to some of that a little bit later in the show, but we'll tone it down a bit here because this question is incredible. No one seems to like it, but everybody is talking about it. That's next on ESPN Radio.
Wrangler Advanced Comfort Jeans, designed to keep up with you no matter what you're doing. Wrangler, be comfortable.
If you were really trying to make this segment all tying together, you would have come back the break with Facts, Kanye, that garbage track. I love Kanye, but that is straight up one of the worst rap songs you're ever going to hear, and it has to do with the shows. Tweet the show, 1-800-Flowers.com, Twitter feed, @Russillo Cannell. You know what's always in season? Surprising a friend or a loved one with Bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. 1-800-Flowers has amazing offers on bouquets starting at just $29.99. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Mel Kiper's latest mock and an issue that Danny has, not with his in particular, but something GMs will tell you, a bunch of different stuff we want to talk about coming up top of the next hour. But you're a sneaker guy. I like sneakers. I never really thought I was that much of a sneaker guy until I started kind of digging back into it, and I've been on a little bit of a run the last
Yeah, I see you over there shopping during the show sometimes.
Yeah, just check it out.
Yeah.
See what happens. They're released, then you get it, and you're like, I don't like this. Here's my brother. My brother couldn't be lucking out better.
Right.
This whole deal, because we have the same size shoe, and he's in high school, and people think he's dealing drugs.
He's got all these fat kicks, collectibles.
Although, maybe he's just working hard, too. So
Yeah,
I shouldn't have assumed anything.
That's right.
So what happened? This was last night?
Yeah, I guess so. Cerruti was the one. Cerruti and Michelle were the ones who kind of informed me of it. But the new Yeezys are out. These are the newest version.
So Kanye's shoe, and I don't really get the other one. Like, people love them. People say they're so comfortable, it's stupid. And it's just the sneaker
They
world.
look comfy.
Right. They look comfy.
I don't own a pair either.
I don't have a pair of them. Cerruti's not an Adidas guy. I love some of the Adidas basketball shoes from the past. I used to like the early Derrick Roses. But these are the new ones, right, Michelle? Was this from Fashion Week?
I hope not.
Yes, from his latest fashion show. He wore them.
Right.
Kanye did.
All right, so he wore them.
Yeah, there's a picture of him, full Yeezy outfit, these new Yeezy shoes.
Okay, so we'll tweet out a picture of this at Russillo Cannell again.
I have a theory.
Yes, because they're terrible.
They're terrible. They look very similar to the Steph Curry shoes that came out last year. the white ones that everybody was ripping on. They were trending. And then it kind of became like, hey, I have these dorky Steph Curry shoes. Like everybody kind of became a thing.
They sold out.
Yes. I think that's what they're trying to do here. I think they're trying to make them so bad that they trend on Twitter, that people are talking about them, that all of a sudden it becomes the cool things to wear them, kind of like Crocs. Maybe not that exact business model. Let's hope not.
People really like Crocs there for a little while. And then they started putting the pins in them, little accessories, And then,
no, but it's like I think that's the theory, is to go as ugly just to make it a thing, and then people will buy them.
So your theory is just make him so bad that everybody talks about him. Because, I mean, that's kind of what his thing has been in general, his whole approach to life.
Yeah, he's out there.
Shake it up.
Yeah. Those shoes are shaking it up, all right?
Did you try to order the original Stephs that nobody liked?
No.
Come on. That's so you to do that.
No, because I had the exact same pair. There were the two lows. I had them in black, and they were all blacked out, and they were the exact same shoe.
Did the black one come out before the white one?
Yes. So I had already had those shoes. I liked them. They were cool, but I was like, I don't need a pair of all white nursing shoes.
Yeah, that's right. They were nursing home shoes.
They look exactly like these. These look like nursing home shoes, maybe even worse. They have more cushion.
Then everybody's like, your dad will want them.
Yes.
How come they're not coming in Velcro? Just Velcro.
Golic had them. You confused me with Golic had them on Mike and Mike.
Under Armour, I think, sent them. By the way, you're an Under Armour guy. I see the boxes in our office.
I love those shoes. They were awesome.
Yeah, but where are our pajamas?
I'm working on the pajamas.
For the show?
Yeah.
Or for you?
I'll try to hook everybody up. Team UA.
So, Rudy, do you have anything on this? Because this is your guy, but it's not your sneaker brand. So I know you're really conflicted on this because I don't know. I mean, do people see these and go, fire?
No, they can't.
So you're right. I don't like most Adidas products.
Yes.
I do like the actual Yeezys, though.
Which ones? The ones that supply?
The older ones.
No, these
like
the
the ones that look like they're really comfortable, like the $1,000 ones that I'm trying to buy a knockoff pair of. But I just think these current ones, like they look like the New Balance dad shoes that like when you're mowing your lawn outside. But I think he does this on purpose because I think he just wants people to be like, what the heck is Kanye doing now? And then everyone's going to go and buy them because it's the cool thing now.
Hold on a second on the New Balance, because I kind of think some New Balance look kind of cool.
Yeah,
Not
I
the
like
ones you're talking about. The white, all plastic dad New Balance.
All right. That's what these look
Nursing
like.
home edition.
Like Bubba has a pair on right now. They're not the ones I'm talking about. Some New Balance shoes are really cool.
Yeah.
There's the specific ones I'm talking about that are not cool.
There's something else we have to discuss.
Yeah.
Because I was worried. I was worried I was going to have to lie to you.
Yeah.
Because I know how you felt about fruit slices.
Yep.
And I brought in some fruit slices of my own, and everybody's like, oh, that's you specifically. We're like, that's not the ones that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you actually found these like from Switzerland somewhere online?
No. I went to the mall.
Oh, you went to the high-end candy
by
store.
myself. Shocker.
Uh-huh.
Right after work yesterday. I said, you know what I'm going to do before Danny leaves? I'm going to get everybody a little grab bag of the fruit slices I was talking about.
Yeah, we're raving about.
Because when they're right, they're so good. And these are the individually wrapped ones. I made a bag for each person on the show, and I flavor diversified here so that everybody got the same kind of cut up with one special bonus slice.
Yeah.
And I was looking at them, and I stole the orange one out of yours, and these are terrible. So whichever ones I got, these are not the good ones.
But
and I
are you
apologize.
still sticking by your theory that the good fruit slice candies are good? Are you still sticking with that?
Yes, I'm saying the good ones are terrific. These are not good ones. And they look good, packaged well, misleading.
I still think it like goes back to like you have childhood memories when they maybe tasted good then because it was some of the only candy you got.
We were poor and we couldn't afford good candy.
Right. So that was like the delicacy, and your taste buds might have changed, as all of ours have noted.
That's some real thinking.
I think it's the more likely case than those things ever being good.
These are not good. I will not argue these. You can give these away to whoever you want. We'll put them outside. Did anybody like them? Saruti, you hated them, right?
I took one bite of the Blue Raz and I wanted to spit it out.
You spit it out?
No, I finished it, but I'm no more.
Bubba, you hated it.
I thought the strawberry and watermelon were okay, but I don't want to have them ever again.
So that's a no?
That would be a no. Michelle she spit it out. I ate one just because I was polite. I was actually going to be the only one in here who was like, yeah, they're pretty good. I would have just, because I felt bad for you.
No, they're really bad. But I promise you there exist these good versions of these fruit slices that I bought.
Unicorn. We're going to have to find them.
I went to the mall by myself, counted them all out, paid, weighed, scale, credit card, whole
Probably
deal.
expensive, too.
Loser. Yeah, I spent like $12 on you guys. Mock drafts. Are they terrible? Next.
Hey, baseball fans. This is Buster Olney. Mark your calendars because the daily edition of the Baseball Tonight podcast returns on Tuesday, February 21st. Make sure you subscribe to the show now in the Listen tab of the ESPN app.
The 2017 NBA All-Star Game. DeRozan, Kyrie, and LeBron lead the Eastern Stars into New Orleans.
Butler throws it down with two hands. Wow. Kyrie Irving. James splits a double, drives and throws it home.
To face the West, led by Kawhi, Durant, and Curry.
James Harden stirring it up. Durant throws it down. Nothing but net. Steph Curry.
Coverage begins Sunday at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app. The NBA All-Star Game this Sunday.
Here's Curry behind the back, half-court heave on its way, and he hits it!
Coverage begins Sunday at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.